A Build Hatch developed production.
Hello, I'm Aaron Kyle and welcome to another episode of Build Hatch. On this week's episode of Build Hatch, I had the opportunity to talk with a really interesting pair of guys with a passion in structural engineering, Noah and Mostafa from Structural Engineering Basics. These guys are both structural engineers and have worked all over the world, including some of the world's most intriguing structural wonders, which, by the way, are some of my favourites. These include Egypt, Canada, and Dubai. Like Build Hatch, these guys are passionate about their craft, and as well as working as structural engineers, these guys run an online community known as Structural Engineering Basics, which teaches architects, engineers, and even just the average punter who wants to know more about structural engineering. Every week it simply amazes me with the people I meet and talk to from all over the world and the reach that we have had through Build Hatch. This episode provided another incredible insight into the world of construction and structural engineering. So let's get into it. Noah and Mostafa from Structural Engineering Basics, welcome to Build Hatch.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Yeah. Hi, Aaron. Thanks for having us.
That's okay. Now, you guys come from a structural engineering background. So, like all our guests on Build Hatch, we always like to take it back to the beginning and find out what motivated our guests and how they got into their construction industry. So, how did you guys get into structural engineering?
That's a great question. Yes, absolutely. I'm originally from Cairo, Egypt. I grew up in Cairo, and very early on, I think in school, I developed real interest in buildings and tall buildings, and I got curious how they're built. My father, he was a structural engineer, so I thought, okay, maybe structural engineering. The engineers, they're responsible for designing and building tall buildings. So that got me excited to interested in the university. I did my undergrad in Cairo in Egypt. And then after graduation, I got a chance to work in Dubai. So that was in 2005. The construction industry was booming over there, lots of tall buildings. And I was very fortunate to get this opportunity very early on in my career because it shaped my career in a way. I got a lot of exposure to the consulting side of structural engineering for tall buildings. Um, my experience there was the pace of work was very fast. There was lots of constructions, lots of projects. So I felt like, okay, I'm gonna go back home, go back to Egypt. I did my master's degree, and then decided to move to Canada and I did my PhD there in Canada. Eventually taught at university and got my license as a registered professional engineer. And Noah and I, we actually worked together in the same office for years. So yeah, looking back, I got a chance to do different things in different countries.
Yeah, look, that's amazing. And before I talk about Dubai, because Dubai is actually one of my favorite places in the world. I love Dubai that much that I'd actually just go there just for a holiday on its own. As they say, like in Vegas, you can have anything you want in Vegas. Dubai is, in my opinion, Vegas on steroids. Like you can have the best food in the world, you can have the best drinks, you can have the best entertainment, you can go to the most amazing places, anything you want in Dubai, they have it. The buildings, I'm fascinated by the buildings and the architecture in Dubai, and the people, they can't do enough for you. So I'm always interested to find out why you got into structural engineering. So you mentioned before that you and Noah met and worked in the same office, and we'll hear from you shortly, Noah. But Mustafa, I'm particularly interested with you coming from Egypt, which, obviously everyone knows how fascinating the architecture and structural engineering is well known in Egypt. So what sort of influenced you to get into structural engineering?
I think it was a genuine interest in how buildings are built. Like, I remember that very early on, it caught my attention, like a building under construction. I would stop and kind of watch it, and I would listen to my dad. he was a structural engineer as well. When he was like, discussing a project or talking about how they solved the problem, it got my interest. Like I wanted to learn about like foundations and like shear walls and tall buildings and things he talked about. And I think I was very lucky to have like mentors or someone that was ahead of me and got me interested, or I was able to learn from them. It helped me in university, at school, in my undergrad, because I kind of knew that there are real life applications for like these classes and these equations. It wasn't just like, a lecture at university. I know that there are professionals out there and they're responsible for building buildings and taking responsibility for it and designing it. And I think my interest kind of developed gradually.
Growing up in Egypt in school, are you guys taught about how amazing you guys are and the history of building pyramids and these structures that has puzzled the world for centuries and centuries? Like, yeah, is that how it is growing up in school?
That's a great question. That's a great question because, as you mentioned, that it's true. Like the pyramids of Giza, like in Egypt, it takes actually being there when you see the sheer size of like the Great Pyramid and how old it is, and it just makes you wonder how that thing was built and what was going on in the minds of the people that built it. But for us here, for Egyptians, I remember growing up, you almost like take them for granted. Like, oh, we can go like a field trip with school to visit the pyramids, and don't think too much about it. And I remember growing up, I thought maybe all countries have their own pyramids or something like that. but it's interesting that you mentioned that because the symbol is almost everywhere in the engineering and construction industry. Like, lots of companies, they would use like the pyramids as like a symbol in their logos. A lot of construction companies would have like the pyramids, so it's there in the DNA, I think.
I like that, and I totally agree with you there because I think if you are from Egypt and you put a pyramid on your business card or your letterhead or something, it almost says "Say no more." You know, like
Yeah, yeah.
we've done this. It's in our blood.
Yeah,
We're the
yeah.
best. All right, Noah. What about you? So you and Mustafa worked in the same office, and you're a structural engineer as well. So tell us a bit about your background.
Yeah, so I probably have the complete opposite journey to structural engineering than Mustafa had. He mentioned that his dad was a structural engineer. I'm sure he grew up with structural engineers all around him. He obviously had the pyramids that he could look at, and probably his dad was pointing out construction sites on his way to school, stuff like that. But for me, I came up with a family of actually architects, not my parents, but I had three or four different architects in my close family, some cousins, some aunts and uncles. So I was interested in architecture, but I didn't really know why. Like it was sort of just like, oh, I want to be an architect like my family, like the other people in my family. And as I grew up, I mean, I was interested in buildings, seeing them, seeing the designs, seeing the cool designs inside and out. But when I got to school, I didn't really know. When I got to university, I didn't really know which path I wanted to take. So I took a whole bunch of random things in first year, like science, math, business. And after the first year, I pretty much narrowed down everything I didn't want to do. And I somehow ended up with engineering. So I'm like, okay, let's give this a shot. I'm good at math. I'm good at problem solving. Seems like it'll be a good fit. And then I started narrowing it down to structural engineering because I ended up getting into civil engineering. And there's like five different or more different branches of civil engineering. So I took a class in my first year, and it was about giving presentations, and you had to do a whole project on that. And my team ended up doing a project on the design of a stadium. So when I got that, I'm a huge sports fan. When I saw everything that went into a stadium, these mega structures got me super interested just in, yeah, the construction, what goes into it on the business side of things, the consultant teams, the contractors. how everyone comes together to build such an awesome structure like that. So I started narrowing in and focusing on structural engineering courses. And when I graduated from civil engineering, I happened to be very lucky. And Mustafa, we actually both got hired at the same time to get a job at one of the city's top structural engineering consulting firms. So once I was there, I didn't have much experience at all from uh, construction side of things. I'd barely been to any construction sites. I'd barely ever designed anything from a structural engineering point of view, just whatever I did in class. So it was a big learning curve for me. But now I'm 9 years in, almost 10 years in, and I'm in charge of designing high-rise buildings at my company. I've designed many schools. I've been the lead project manager for schools, even microbreweries, which is pretty awesome. Worked on hospitals, worked on all different types of commercial and residential buildings. So it's been a big progression to this point and a big learning curve.
Yeah, I actually like how you had an interest in sports, and that sort of led your interest into sports arenas and things like that. And I think that'd be a really interesting and enjoyable part of working, particularly in structural engineering for sure.
Yeah, I found out when I got hired at my company that they were the structural engineers for the brand new hockey arena in the city and our football stadium. So when I got on, I was just like, yeah, in awe of all the cool projects that the company was doing, and that I knew that I had potential to do similar projects down the road.
Now, so you guys sort of continued on with your journey and were working together in the same firm. So what was that like?
It was great. Like I met Mustafa. Me and Mustafa became friends immediately because we both started on the same day. So I think I got into the industry, or I started the job right out of my undergrad, but Mustafa had just finished his master's or his PhD. So we were a bit on different levels. He had a lot more experience and knowledge than me, but we had one thing in common. We were new at the company. It was our both of our first time working at a consulting engineering firm, obviously in Canada. Mustafa had experience in Dubai and in Egypt, but throughout the years, and Mustafa left the firm about a year ago, but we ended up working together on as a team on a couple big high-rise building projects, which was awesome. So Mustafa had his experience from working with tall buildings over in the Middle East, and I was the engineer who was in charge of dealing with clients and stuff and doing the building overall. But Mustafa was the one who was doing the modeling, the complex modeling of the high-rise building with wind loads and snow loads and stuff. So we worked together and thought we did a pretty good job, and it was great, working as a team to get information and problem solve together.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think we did a very good team tackling like a complex building, a tall building, work together, and we've learned a lot from the process. Like during the lifetime of the project, we get a lot of questions from like the architects, from the contractors, things that needs to be changed, things to me need to be updated. We go back and forth like with the model. Noah mentioned like the 3D modeling for the stress analysis and the forces and everything. Things that got missed maybe in construction, uh, things that the contractor is proposing a different way of doing it. So it was like a lot of back and forth, a lot of modifying things and updating the drawings and issuing new details. I enjoyed it. It was great.
Look, you just mentioned something very important then, and that was about relationships with contractors. So I guess to be a leader in your field and to be a really practical structural engineer, like all consultants and all people or roles involved in a construction project, it's so important to build rapport with contractors and have that relationship. So how important is that for you in terms of your relationships with contractors and clients?
Yeah, to me, it's very important. When you have a good relationship, it just makes that project be a lot smoother and go a lot more effectively. So when I have a contractor that I work with on a project who asks a lot of questions, who's in constant communication with me, and not asking stupid questions and not talking to him all the time or talking to them all the time, you know, uh, helping them, holding them their hands throughout the way. But when you have a contractor who wants to work with you, wants to come up with solutions, if there's a problem that comes up on site, they want to contact you to fix it. Sometimes I've seen contractors try fixing on their own. When I by the time I get to the site, it's too late. I mean, they've already spent all this time, this money doing this, and sometimes I have to tell them that what they had spent all that time doing has to be taken down or modified. And if they only reached out to me earlier and worked as a team to solve this problem, could have saved a lot of people time and money. So one thing that I sort of preach is, getting to understand, a contractor builds, right? And I design as a structural engineer, but I need to understand what goes into the construction. When I first started my job, I had no field experience. I'd be designing a beam or I'd be designing a slab, and um, it turns out at the beginning that sometimes it wasn't buildable. I get a call from a contractor and they'd say, "Yeah, Noah, you crunch the numbers and yeah, you can put in all this rebar in the slab, but it literally doesn't fit." Or like, how are we supposed to do this, right? So I took my first few years and I treated that as a learning experience, and I went out to job sites as much as I could to learn from the contractors. Sometimes I would just call up a contractor, say, "Hey, do you mind if I come out? I'll put my hard hat on, put my PPE on, and I'll just shadow one of your workers or just walk around, show me how things are actually constructed." So it took me a while to actually figure that out. And I'm still learning, obviously, but now I know, like, I have to be able to design things, put things on paper that's actually constructible. So it goes both ways. And that's what I like in a good contractor or even good owner, right? That they know the side of the engineering. They know what goes into a proper design. They know what goes into the codes that we use, how things are designed, how loads get transferred to a building. That type of relationship and that type of knowledge makes things go a lot smoother. I've made connections along the way. I've done a lot of networking. I'm part of Young Construction Leaders of Manitoba. I'm on a board with a whole bunch of contractors and architects. So just gaining that network also helps you progress in your career, and also helps you on future jobs when you get to work with someone that you've networked and you already know. Those are always the best types of jobs to work on.
Yeah, I love where you never stop learning, and I talk about it regularly about lifelong learning, and it's something that I learned a long time ago myself, and just always learning and being a sponge. And I like how you said getting around on site and walking around with one of the guys and putting on the vest and the hard hat and the PPE and just getting out there and learning, because it's amazing what you can learn from the troops on the ground, as they say, the foot soldiers, the guys that are there on site doing it every single day. They equally probably appreciate a fresh set of eyes, some of those guys as well.
Definitely, yeah.
Now, Mustafa, so Middle East construction, as I said, I love Dubai. And when I was over there last talking to some of the guys that do this, they obviously have certain shifts, and a lot of the construction happens at night when working in the heat's more manageable. And so, what are some of the challenges with working over there?
That is so true. Yes. Heat is definitely one of the big challenges there. So, um, my experience there was very interesting because it was early on in my career, and I love what you just said and what Noah. I echo what Noah was talking about. I've always enjoyed getting out of the office and going on site and learning, like being like a sponge and trying to pay attention and see how things are done. So my experience in Dubai in June, July, the temperature is so hot, like around noon. I think it could get like 50 degrees Celsius. That's pretty
Oh,
hot. Like
without a doubt.
I remember I had like difficulty moving around. Like I remember, like the steel rebar on site, like construction, was so hot. Like if you touch it, it would kind of burn, like leave a mark on
Oh,
your hand.
absolutely.
And the pace of construction was very fast. Clients, it's very demanding. They want their building kind of done quickly. Construction shifts are pretty long, like almost like 24 hours. Obviously, at night, it's the temperature is more pleasant to continue working. So I remember I was on site for a high-rise building, a multi-story building, and they used an interesting structural system. It was like a post-tension, so it has an interesting way of building it. They do the typical floors. Um, it goes ahead of the lateral load-resisting systems, like the shear walls. So the top, I remember three or four floors under construction. It was like a long, like you use a lot of ladders. Like there wasn't like stairs or like even the lift, the fry kind of elevator doesn't go all the way up there. So just getting to your day, starting your day, and where the construction is going on, it takes a lot of time just like to go all the way there, like on top of the building. And then you need to pay attention. I remember I was trying to kind of count the strands to make sure that the structural drawings match what's being built. And there is a lot going on. It's a lot of subcontractors, a lot of workers from different backgrounds. A lot of construction workers, they're from like different countries. So communication was a bit of a challenge. There's always like, you talk to like the foreman or like their leader, and he would kind of speak their language and give them instructions. And then if you need something done or there is like a mistake in a rebar or something, you would look for, okay, so who's working on what. And I thought that was a very interesting experience to work with people from different backgrounds, very hot temperature, challenging to climb all the way on top of the building, tower cranes. It's busy. Um, it was a very interesting experience for me.
What about the foundations, like building in virtually a desert? Building a structure in that sort of foundation. Like, are there any major differences in terms of how far below or deep into the ground you go in terms of structural engineering there?
Well, it depends on the site. Each construction site and each project is different. There is a very famous landmark in Dubai. It's the seven-star hotel, Burj Al Arab. I don't know if you got a chance to see it. It's built on its own island in the Gulf.
Yes.
uh
Yeah,
and
that's amazing.
yes, so yeah, obviously that was a very interesting challenge
Exactly.
to get something like that built, especially because of the type of soil. um, Loose sand in saturated water could have a risk of very interesting phenomenon. If there's an earthquake or vibration, there's something called liquefaction, which is the building could actually sink in the saturated sand, which is pretty much like a lot of water, a lot of sand. So there are like challenges because of the interesting buildings they build in Dubai. They kind of literally push the boundaries of what has been done before and what can be built. So they have the tallest building now in the world. So that was a very interesting challenge. Like uh, build a building so tall, just pouring and pumping concrete all the way up there. It's a challenge in itself. Like you need to do multi-stage pumping of concrete to reach like the top of the building. So just the scale of like the projects they do there, it's very interesting. So just back to your question on foundations. I think um, like a difference between working there and working in Canada. I know in Winnipeg and Manitoba, the soil we used a lot of like a deep foundation, like piles. We use piles all the way. Over there, you can get actually some very high strength or like high capacity from the sand soil, or like maybe the bedrock. The rock is like close to the surface, so not all buildings are the same. You don't need a lot of deep foundations, but for tall buildings, this is another interesting project. I didn't get a chance to work on it, but it's because the architecture, the shape of the building, it was tilting. Its center of gravity was like almost outside its footprint. So it needed a lot of like backspan raft foundations with deep piles to anchor it in the ground. It's just like the interesting architecture they do there presents very interesting challenges.
Yeah, that seems to be an interesting phenomenon that was popular in the 70s. There was quite a few buildings that were being constructed with that sort of on a bit of a lean, and I know of one building that's under construction at the moment in Melbourne that they're doing a similar thing. So it must be coming back into fashion, having buildings on a slight lean as a bit of a feature.
Yeah, they look cool. They look interesting. Like the building is trying to move, or like it puts definitely like this interesting feel or like dynamic kind of feel to the building. Architects, think of all sorts of interesting ideas, and then they bring the engineers and try to work it out and try to build it.
What happens during winter in Canada? Like, can you work all year round in Canada? How does that impact you?
So yes, you can. When it comes to concrete, because obviously a lot of tall buildings, you need concrete for the core or even just the slabs or whatever. You have to heat and hoard, which means that you have to provide a temporary structure around the concrete elements around the formwork, and you have to heat it to a certain temperature. I forget. I think it might be above 10 degrees Celsius. And you have to pour and you have to cure the concrete within those temperatures. So obviously, if it's -50, which that's not uncommon sometimes in some winters in Winnipeg, that's very expensive to keep that heat, that section of the job site heated. So a lot of the times the scheduling of jobs is impacted by, or they adjust the schedule in order to minimize the amount of heating and hoarding that you have to do. So if it's a tall building that's being constructed over 2 years, or maybe let's say 18 months, well, they're going to make sure that they do all the concrete over one of the winters so they don't have to go into 2 winters, and you know it, it skyrockets from there. And then obviously the structural engineers, we design for snow buildup. And it can get pretty significant. Like in the course, I talk all about it. But, when you have 2 feet of snow, that's usually equivalent to about, a bunch of elephants on the roof, pretty much. So we've seen roof collapses because of snow buildups because it wasn't designed for that. If you put rooftop equipment on, mechanical equipment, we design for that as well because there's snow drifting that can build up against the side of the units. So there's a lot of different things that you have to take into account. And we do a lot of design checks for existing buildings if they want to change their mechanical units. Sometimes it's really expensive. It depends on the access to the roof, but often you have to reinforce the roof structure. Sometimes, if the snow buildup is significant enough and the original foundations weren't designed for heavy loads, you have to go and underpin the foundation, which, depending on the layout of the structure and what's going on in the basement or lower levels, it could be quite a mess and quite expensive. So depends where you are, but in Canada, but everywhere, you have to take into account some sort of snow buildup in the design.
Oh, totally. And these are the things that not everyone thinks about, and you know, a lot of, particularly in Australia, we don't necessarily have those challenges. So yeah, it's always the things that you don't think about. Now, you guys have formed Structural Engineering Basics. I absolutely love it because with Build Hatch, we've kind of created a community, and our premise is built on a passion for the industry and telling the real stories and the people behind the real projects. And you guys have basically developed this movement in terms of educating people in structural engineering, which it's not a traditional course. It comes from somewhere close to your hearts and speaks from passion. So can you tell us a little bit about structural engineering basics?
It all started one day. My brother does has an SEO business, so search engine optimization. He does websites. He does helps people develop their websites and reach as many people as possible. So he came to me one day and he said, "Hey, let's use our expertise together. I can make you a website. I can get it ranked high on Google, and you do all the technical stuff. You provide your knowledge." So I thought it would be nice to work with my brother, but I was really busy at the time and I didn't know what I would actually teach on. Yeah, I know a lot about structural engineering, but what do people want to know, right? So one day I was sitting down and Mustafa has a desk had her desk right next to me. And I got a whole bunch of calls from contractors, architects, owners, and it was each of those conversations to me. I hung up the phone and I would think to myself, if only they knew a little bit more about how structural engineering worked, how we design buildings, what we take into account when we design buildings, it could go a long way. It could save them time. It could save them that the time it's spent on the RFI and save everyone time for reading the RFI and responding. It could save site time if only they had staff who knew a little bit more. Because there are some construction programs that go over a bit about what structural engineers do, but for the most part, I guess they learn on the job or they have to learn from structural engineers like us. So I went to Mostafa one day because I knew that he was a professor, so he had experience teaching, and I had none. I told him, "What do you think about this idea?" And he said, "Yeah, no, I heard you on the phone these last few days, and I was overhearing your conversations, and I thought to myself the exact same thing because I had the similar conversations with contractors, with owners, with architects. Let's." So I came up to him. I said, "How about we create a platform where we can teach people the basics of structural engineering? Obviously, no one cares about the calculations. That's what people pay us to do, but dive into what we take into account when we design something, why we need a beam here, what is involved if you want to put a big opening here, how do foundations work, when do you need a deep foundation versus a shallow foundation. We can give them tips based on our experiences. We can provide tips for architects, contractors. This might even be a good resource for future engineers. So we decided to make a platform. We made structuralengineeringbasics.com, and we started off. We made a bunch of educational videos on what is structural engineering, what do structural engineers do, talked about foundations. We wrote blogs, and then eventually our ultimate goal was to make an online course. So it took us about a year. I mean, we had both had full-time jobs. We still do have full-time jobs. So evenings, weekends, we would meet together and we put together a comprehensive course on structural engineering. And it wasn't just what we thought people wanted to know. We spent months interviewing people like you, contractors, architects, owners, to say, if you wanted a course, if you think a course like this would be valuable, what do you want in that course to get results? So I'll let Mostafa explain a bit further, but yeah, we based it on what people wanted, and so far it's been a huge success. We've had people sign up from 12 countries all over the world, and it's given us the relationships that we never would have had. So it's been just a great experience overall, and don't regret any of it.
No, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it has been great, and a lot of like we've had a lot of success stories with the people that our course and platform helped. We have a contractor from the States. He actually used our course and platform to train his new staff for like whenever like he hires a new member, he gets them to kind of take the course and have a better understanding of the basics. There is also a manager. He originally, I think, he's from the States, but he actually lives in Japan. He found himself as a project manager working with contractors, engineers to develop buildings. And he thought, yeah, he came across our message and our course and thought, yeah, like I'd better understand a little bit more about structural engineering and what goes into the building. And I'm very happy. We're very happy when we get this feedback, and how something like the story Noah mentioned started from like thinking, yeah, there. It seems like there is a need out there for like some basic kind of understanding of structural engineering, and seeing it helping people. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, our online course is actually pre-recorded because I know a lot of times people don't have time to take 8 hours out of their day, or even 4 hour chunks might be difficult. I know construction industry is booming in a lot of areas. Architects, contractors, um, other engineers, owners are busy, and to take time to sometimes there might be a course on structural engineering where you have to fly, you have to pay for a hotel, you got to pay for the expenses of the course. You also are missing time that you could be billing clients back at home. So we did find that because there really wasn't anything out there. We did our research on this topic, except for one course that I just mentioned, and it went into too much detail, went into teaching contractors and architects formulas and calculations. Well, we thought, they didn't need to do that. So why not do a pre-recorded course? We have 12 hours of content, or around 12, and you can watch it at your own pace. Each of our videos are about 5 to 10 minutes long. You can find a section of the course that you like or that's applicable to what you're currently doing or looking for. Let's say you're a contractor, you're about to build a foundation, you want to know a bit more about what goes into that. You can watch the foundation section of our course and then get back to the other areas of the course after. And in the course, we have assignments if you want. We have a Facebook group for our student members to come on and ask us questions, or just collaborate with each other, ask each other questions, learn from each other. And we also have office hours that people can come in. We can have a Zoom call, and people can come with their questions about the course material, and we can have a chat there. So we've pretty much up to this point met one-on-one or face-to-face with every single person who's signed up for the course so far. So looking forward to meeting more people all over the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the moment, I'm thinking of a situation that's developing in Australia where we are starting to see a bit of a shift where construction is an essential service in Australia at the moment during COVID. But what we are starting to see is builders and designers are starting to follow demand in regional areas, because one thing that COVID's impacted society in the short term at least, and people will forget about COVID down the track, and things will go back to so-called normal. But for a little while and for the foreseeable future, is people are starting to move out of the cities now that people are more accepting of people working online and working remotely and having Zoom meetings and things like that. People are starting to shift, and that's creating different construction markets. So I'd imagine if you're a concrete formwork carpenter working on massive high-rise construction, and all of a sudden either you move out to a regional area, or there's demand for you to adapt to understanding structural engineering basics on a different level, where you're not used to working on high rise, and all of a sudden you might be working on smaller commercial jobs or smaller residential story type developments, then that's something that you can put to practical use and understand another type of structures that you wouldn't normally work on before the current situation.
Yeah, exactly. And in our course, we do our best to, explain things from an engineer's point of view who's currently working in the field. So we give a lot of scenarios, or we'll sometimes pull up pictures from an actual job site to explain things in a way that someone who is on a construction site would see things. We take a picture of reinforcing, or a steel beam or a column or something like that, and we explain it in ways that we think they would best understand. So I definitely think it's relatable, and it's easy to understand. And so far, yeah, that's been the main response and the main positive for the course, that anyone can come on and understand it. If you check out our blogs on our website. I write it from a very personal point of view, and same as Mostafa. So, I'm talking about. I just released a blog on lateral loading on buildings. So like wind loads, earthquake loads, what's required to resist those loads when it comes to a structure. But I'm not using fancy terms. I think I said, what are you going to do when the big bad wolf comes and huffs and puffs and blows on your building? Well, you better need something. And I even make an analogy to using popsicle sticks or spaghetti to make towers, and show how that works. Just I simplify things. And yeah, it's been a good response when it comes to that, because there isn't much out there. A lot of structural engineers and engineers are in their own mind and very technical and even introverts. So we sort of break out of the shell a bit and put out our content in ways that anyone can get on board with.
I like how it comes from a place of passion, and it's something that you guys believe in, and you guys had the foresight to do this as a side project, and you're working on it and growing it and developing it. So yeah, I think it's a great thing for the industry and people that are interested in it.
It is definitely. And I just had one more thing to add to what Noah said. Aaron, I like really what you mentioned about like if there is like a shift in construction and you need to adapt or learn how different things are built. I actually faced a very similar challenge moving to Canada. Some construction building materials are not very common in the Middle East, like building with wood. So I had to learn that actually, like, reading the codes and the standards, learning from like other professionals. And then eventually, when I got comfortable with it and I was able to design buildings with these new systems, that's something that we talk about in like the platform and the course as well, like different construction materials and different ways of building things. So I can see, like, I would have loved to kind of have something like this out there to kind of introduce different systems, how things are built, how the tall buildings are built, how like wood structures are built. It just resonated with me when you were talking about like this is like a need out there because of the shift in demand in buildings or construction. There is, yeah, definitely need for it out there.
Well, Noah and Mustafa, I love that we've been able to reach out and get to know each other. As I said to you before, I love how you guys have put your passion into creating. I call it a movement. Where people can go and have access to resources and an online program and find out more about your industry. And kudos to you guys for doing that. And so we'll put a link to your website, which is structuralengineeringbasics.com. I encourage people to go on there and check it out, and you'll be able to find more information about you guys. So, Noah and Mustafa, thank you for coming on to Build Hatch. It's been really nice.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
It's been great. Thank you for having us, and hope we can do this again in the future.
Well, that was another Build Hatch episode with Noah and Mustafa from Structural Engineering Basics. If you would like to know more about structural engineering, or would like to just check out some of their online courses and seminars, I recommend you go to the Structural Engineering Basics website or their other socials. As usual, please check out our Instagram and other socials where you'll be able to learn more about our guests and some of the features of the work that we talk about. Have a great week, and you'll hear me again on the airwaves next week. Thanks for listening to another episode of Build Hatch.
You have experienced a Build Hatch developed production.